Big interview listeners. I would say we've got a treat today because I almost always say that. But we've got somebody I love listening to, somebody who's relatively new in my world in terms of knowing her, but who's perfect for the big interview because talented, highly articulate, a big achiever, and the future of something that's taking shape right now, in my opinion anyway. So that means Emma Byrne. Irrespective of your country's recent performance at Hampden, welcome to the big interview.
Thank you very much. So happy to be here.
Well, it's early to say that because we met through a mutual friend. I've listened to you commentate. We've bumped into each other a couple of times at games, and I've seen you going, who is this mentaler? Well,
That's not true.
It's only going to get worse. I need to outline that born in Kildare, champion of England severally, a Champions League winner, which is a big phrase to be able to use. Still by a long distance, Ireland's record cap winner, but also a person of substance and intelligence and talent, which is a lovely mix, and it's why the big interview exists. Before we begin talking about you, if we go back to Hampden, where you were working rather than playing, damn it, it's just ridiculous. For you, not just for the squad, for the nation, what does it do to you in terms of emotions, but also mentally, about seeing your nation now not only going to a big tournament for the first time, going to the World Cup, but going in those circumstances, which were so both dramatic, also impressive. Now that you've had you've spoken about it a lot too, but now you've had tons of time to assimilate it, where does it leave you, both professionally and emotionally?
Well, I mean, for us, for our country, it's the biggest achievement, I think, in sport in general, just because where we came from, the standards we were setting, and then this team emerge. And as you said, the way they've done it, the group stages were really difficult. And then we got Scotland. So I did have mixed emotions because I have some very, very good friends who play for Scotland. But I was happy because it's a long, long relationship we've had with Scotland. In fact, my first ever game was against Scotland under 16. So we go back a long way. I mean, professionally, I was extremely proud of the girls. That's an emotion as well. I think it's going to open up many, many doors because they're going to be on a platform, a different kind of platform that brings in a media platform, that brings in sponsorship, that creates lots of work and a buzz around the country, which in turn is going to help us, ex-players as well, to get involved. And emotionally, it was just incredible. I've never felt anything like it in my life. I didn't realise I was so frustrated. I didn't even realise when I was commentating before, I was a little bit angry that we weren't winning. Looking back on it now, I was a little bit hard on the girls sometimes, probably because I was channeling that through my own emotion, like I needed them to qualify. And when they did qualify, it was just a release. I just felt completely free of those frustration chains, so to speak. And I was just extremely emotional. I couldn't even speak. I was commentating, and thank God the main commentator could see that, and he just carried on talking because I was literally mute. I couldn't speak.
You've done a really nice thing without knowing it, because you've looked back to our very first interview 7 years ago was with Gary Neville. And although we spoke about lots of things in Gary's career, we spoke in Sky in a little sound booth, and I started talking about Richie Beno had just died, and I knew that he was interested in cricket like I am. And we got on to him being really articulate about how he chooses words to describe people, the process of criticising ex-teammates or whatever. So he had put himself in a position of trying to work out what he wanted to say, where his lexicon could take him, and dealing with the emotions of maybe not having a go at, that's really poor terminology, but speaking critically for even constructively, and then having to face meeting that person again.
Yeah.
He put a lot of thought into it. Now, I've listened to you, I know that you've put a lot of thought into your analysis and your co-commentary, and also I hear and see ability and vision for football. But that moment of going, gosh, some of my, some of your terminology betrayed emotions rather than
I mean, yeah,
analysis.
It happened quite recently, as in last year. I generally don't criticise, like it's never personal. The girls know that. The girls know it's never ever personal. But I would definitely try and be constructive with the criticism. I'm a teacher as well, so I understand that process. But last year we played against Sweden at home in Tala, and I had made a comment that the girls don't know, they look like they don't know what they're doing. And I was referring to our fullbacks. And I shouldn't have said that, because one of the fullbacks, who again is one of my very good friends, was annoyed and angry with the comment. She goes, "What do you mean? I knew what I was doing, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, it wasn't a personal thing. I meant you just didn't look organised, like you weren't sure of your role, which is not your job. It's your manager's job, your coach's job. So when I explained it a bit better to her, she was like, "Oh, right, okay." And she started talking to me again. I didn't even know she wasn't talking to me, by the way. So that made me think about certain ways I speak about the players. And it came across obviously bad, because I wasn't talking about the players individually, I was talking about their organisation and what they did in training. Because the easy thing about football is being organised. The easy thing is organising your team and giving them their roles and being very specific. So I was getting frustrated that it seemed like the girls didn't know that. So that came out in my commentary. So yes, it's something I still need to work on. It's not perfect.
But it's interesting that the realisation of watching them qualify and feeling cleansed and realising maybe that just was a tiny Gulf Stream in some of the things I said. I think it's a good intellectual process to go through. If memory serves, maybe not right at the final, but pretty promptly, you're mobbed by the winning team as soon as they see you on the sidelines at Hampden, which speaks of friendship, affection, I don't know, also an acknowledgement of the people who made the path earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, we speak so much about it in Ireland, about that standoff we had, about the strike we had. The media speak a lot about it. So, I mean, personally I don't, because I don't like talking about things about me. I'll talk about everybody else, but I don't like...
My producer Neil will be listening to this and going, "That's exactly what we both said. It's really evident where Emma's very comfortable and articulate, and where she's like, yeah, whatever, let's move on."
Yeah. No, it's true, and it's just how I am, and it's fine. I know a lot of people are okay with that, but I find it really difficult. So when we do speak about that time, I do like to emphasise, because a lot of people think it was just me. It wasn't just me. A lot of, interviewers would ask, or say that you were very instrumental. Okay, maybe I was, but it was a whole team. And do you know what? The younger players were actually braver than me, because I had my foot out the door.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, I might as well leave on a good note. So yeah, but yeah, we've been through a lot. The Katie McCabe, Anya Gorman, all the players, that are there now that I have played with in my time, we've been through a huge deal, and it was very difficult to do, because, the Scots will understand this as well. The Irish find it very difficult to fight for what they deserve. As in sporting wise, individual wise, as in job wise, it's really difficult for my generation, which I'm considering Kate McCabe my generation, to go and to ask for things that you feel like you deserve. So we found it very difficult, but that's why we brought another organisation on board to do that, because that might not have happened. If
the PFAI or?
The PFAI.
So, okay, stop for a second, because you said something culturally interesting there and you dragged us into it, which I agree with. Why do you find it difficult to state our worth and ask for something?
I mean, it has to be something, the way we were brought up in general. I do know my parents were like, just get your head down and work. Yeah. Just work and do what you have to do, and don't worry about those little things. They're hard workers, and I know a lot of my friends' parents are the same. It wasn't about getting more. It was like, get your education, go and work, and be happy with what you have. Stop looking for more.
And if you're looking for more, maybe it speaks of, in theory, you sounded a bit arrogant or full of yourself or something.
Exactly.
When actually in this world, which is fast moving and demanding and exploitative, more and more, and for some time you have had to stand up for yourself. But
yeah, I mean, it's changed. I think it's changed a lot. But exactly what you said, you don't want to come across arrogant. You don't want to come across needy, even like, you know, and that's why we had to bring someone else on, because whenever we did get together, and by the way, this has been going on for years and years. That's how all the emotion came rushing out, because this started when well before I was even playing, but I remember it starting when I was about 18. I didn't have any influence in it. I was one of the babies in the teams, but through my whole career internationally, we were constantly fighting for better conditions.
It might be worthwhile, because what I hope this interview is doing is reaching audiences that maybe might be aware of your success, Arsenal's success, Ireland's qualification for the World Cup, but they might not know the details. And I know that in Ireland you've had to speak about this repeatedly, and you've done so well. But if I summarise this badly, please smack me down. But there was a super Saipan effect based on years and years of women's football being treated by the FAI as it's a privilege for you to be here. We're going to give you kind of just about the minimum provisions. It doesn't matter that it's costing you personally or financially. We probably won't have the right facilities for you or the right kit for you, over and over and over again. And protests or even any push was falling on deaf ears. If I understand that, it's a really glib summary.
No, that's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I mean, it's only that we'd such good people working with us, like the kit man, like coaches, just in general, and just the girls themselves. We had a great time. That's why we kind of all stuck together. But actually, I don't blame some girls in previous years quitting and focusing on their job or focusing on something else, because it was a major sacrifice for them, for all of us. But to be quite honest, we had been knocking on the door just for simple things. It would always start simple because that was our personality. We didn't want to ask for too much, and so what we felt we deserved, we'd go and we'd ask for, and nothing was being done about it, which it wasn't about money at one stage. It was just about being productive, involving players in, I don't know, whatever the FAI were doing, whether it was soccer schools, whether it was photo shoots for new kit, you know, little things like that. It wasn't all about money. It was just, can we promote our team?
Can I use the word that you used in the front of the jerseys when you were just respect, no?
Exactly.
Or at least respect as a building block. That might not be all involvement, consultation.
Yeah.
But respect is the building block that seemed to have been missing.
Yeah, exactly. And when we talk about investment, it wasn't about money, all about money, obviously, there has to be money, but it was about invest your time, invest the respect, invest yourself in a little bit in the team, because, you know, for me it was difficult. I feel a bit like Roy Keane when it comes to this. I was playing at Arsenal, I was winning everything, we were being treated really well, and then I was going back to my national team and we weren't getting that same respect. So it was really difficult for me to go back there and not be frustrated and not demand more.
Do you remember what you felt in Saipan?
With Roy Keane?
Yes.
I was a bit devastated because I loved him so much and we needed him.
At that stage back then, could you see crystal clear his point?
I could, yeah, because I was involved in it and we knew how it was, and we knew, you know, obviously we thought they were treated like kings.
By comparison, there's no argument.
Yes. So when he complained about that, I knew it was because he come from club-wise something that demands, so demanding. He's so demanding of himself, so demanding of his team to win and to succeed, and that kind of builds that momentum, and you expect that wherever you play, and especially for your country that you're more passionate about probably than your club. So I think that was just his passion coming through. I don't know if he's ever said he regrets certain things, but obviously we all regret certain things, but I definitely, the route from where it was coming from, it was because he demanded more.
So there's a direct equivalence between where you all drew a line and where he personally drew a line. It's not identical because he was an individual. They were on the verge of the World Cup there. As a Scot watching him, I just thought the world okay, and I understood standards, and it was very divisive because I go to Dublin, I certainly did do, and I couldn't understand certain people I expected to feel exactly that didn't. I'm an idiot. it seems that Keane is better with McCarthy now. I took longer to forgive the setup, particularly afterwards when they had the meeting and it was the allegations that he'd feigned injury or should have turned up for it. I was fizzing, and I'm the type of idiot that's less forgiving than Roy Keane, which is a desperate phrase to art from your own mouth. But given that there's a parallel with when you draw a line as a group, when you say, we might strike and we're going to bring in external advice and support, which obviously was crucial. But what I think is often the case when a wall is broken down, something that the people who've suffered behind the wall can't imagine will ever happen, everybody goes, well, of course, that's right. That's it. And this, I cut out this, I think it's from Ruud Doctor, who was the high performance director. And I think this is accurately quoted from a letter sent to you all then, at the point where you were saying, these are our requests, we want to negotiate, here's what we'll do if we don't get listened to. And apparently Ruud wrote, we would urge you to consider seriously, both individually and as a group, how your proposed actions could damage your club career, your international reputation as players, and your responsibility to the many young people who looked up to you as role models. Your current stance of making this into an issue about PFAI representation will not yield any positive results, but will in all likelihood damage women's football and its future development. In context of not just the qualification campaign and going to the World Cup, but the clear spurt in what more respectful professional treatment has done, it's impossible to understand somebody more misguided, selfish, and if that's what you were facing all the time, it's scandalous. I don't understand how it came to that position.
Well, it came to that point because we decided not to back down. We did have...
No, I mean, how did their such stupidity become ingrained?
Well, it's funny because I'm kind of used to hearing things like that. I was getting phone calls. I feel like there was a change, there was a turn at one point, because originally when we were communicating with the FAI, because I was communicating with them, even though I was told not to, it would be better if we didn't communicate. It's better to go through the...
When the door slams shut, it's like, let them sweat, don't talk.
Yeah, and we were all getting advised, just to stay away from it and let the professionals deal with it. But I was communicating because I felt I owed our manager, our newly appointed manager, an explanation, because it was nothing to do with him, and he didn't even know the situation.
That wasn't Colin Bell, was it?
It was Colin Bell, yeah. So I was communicating with him, just saying, listen, we don't want to do it, we want to be in training, but we have to do something. And I was trying to give him a bit of the history.
Yeah.
And at first he was like, okay, just keep me informed of what's going on, just let me know, and obviously, we want things to be better. So I was like, okay, that was the initial conversation. And then as it got closer to the day of in Liberty Hall, when we actually went to the media and said we were striking, I feel like there was a change in everybody's, in everyone's mood, in everyone's way to approach it, because I was bombarded with phone calls. I was getting phone calls at 3:00 in the morning before that morning, and basically this kind of message. Don't do it, it'll be detrimental to women's football. And in the end, I just switched my phone off, and I probably didn't switch it back on for about 6 weeks later, being honest. Yeah. I found it a very difficult time. I'm hoping, I know some of the girls did get phone calls. I hope they didn't get as many, because I'm not sure we would have stuck together in that way. I do know some of the parents were getting phone calls.
It seems atrocious. You're not just saying it matter-of-factly, but it's a historical fact. But it genuinely seems beyond bullying. It's such blindness by people for not understanding that the issue was correct, that dialogue could solve it, that probably a better future did lie ahead. It wasn't motivated by selfishness or greed. It seems genuinely astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't until we spoke to the PFAI and they assured us what we were asking for wasn't much, that we were like, oh, okay, let's do it, then let's go for it. Because we were always doubting it. Yeah, but maybe they don't have the money. I think it's an Irish mentality, always considering someone else's position as well. they said they didn't have the money. They said because of issues in the past, the new stadium, all this kind of stuff, and we were like, oh sure, yeah.
There's always a reason.
Yeah, you know what, they don't. And then in the meantime, we were watching everybody around us, including Scotland, Wales, England for sure, just going up the ladder and improving. And I just thought that, professional-wise, this is just not good enough. And it's not even about money, it's about just a better standard of training, better standard of coaches. Everything just needs to be better.
We can't say, and I won't say, from what you did in 2017, there's a direct correlation to winning at Hampden and going to the World Cup. But it's a tributary. It's definitely helped. I
mean, I think it's helped a little bit. Obviously, the girls have now the opportunity to train more, which is a massive thing. And also just football in general, I think, has been an attribute, because there are careers in football. When I went to England, it wasn't about playing football as a career. It was about playing football as a hobby, and then...
If I understand it correctly, it was going on a lash for the weekend, but we're going to come to that. I know that you're talking about when you eventually moved rather than how it happened. But yes. You're right, it's creating a structure whereby it can be a living, not just a terribly demanding hobby.
Yeah, exactly, and there are many careers in football now. Whether it doesn't have to be on the pitch, every team has gone professional in England. They need the staff, media. There's lots of different outlets. But I definitely, 2017. Not only that, I think one of the biggest things, apart from the money and the support the girls are getting, one of the biggest things for me was the media attention. It was massive. It was huge, and that has kind of just carried on from then.
Yeah.
There's more interest in it. The national newspapers, the big TV platforms have followed that and are supporting the girls. That changed in 2017. That changed from that day.
Wasn't your original purpose, but it's been a byproduct.
Yeah.
Can we go then to the game a little bit, because much though it stung that we were out-tacticked and that we didn't particularly perform well. There's two key moments, obviously the missed penalty and the goal. Was it a penalty? The way I understand the rules, is if you're falling down and your arm happens to be out, then that's not if you're standing and your arm's out, it's not an unnatural position. And much though I'd like to see us pop it home and go through at the World Cup, when I went, was it Niamh?
Niamh Fahey.
I don't think it was a penalty.
But there are so many penalties given that are so harsh. Like, this would be one of the more blatant ones I've seen.
She was falling, right? She lost her balance.
Her arm was out. Of course, she created a bigger surface with that. So, yeah, I think it was a penalty. And as speaking to Niamh, I don't think she had any qualms about that either. Plus, she's a Gaelic player, so I wouldn't be surprised if she actually did try and stop it with her hand. But yeah, it was a penalty, and you know what? The pressure Scotland were putting on us at that time, they probably deserved it.
You'd have thought, having played with Caroline and knowing her well, you'd have probably thought she was going to put it away. And
money was on her.
Her career at Madrid at the moment, I mean, she's ripping things up at Madrid. Yeah. Money was on her because of what? Talent, mentality?
Technically, she's one of the best players I've ever come across. Mm-hmm. And I'd put my mic down. In fact, I was like, that's it, we're done. If they'd have scored that goal, they would have went on to win maybe 2 or 3, I'm very sure of that.
As a top-class goalkeeper, what did Courtney do well?
Well, I think, first of all, she guessed well. As a left footer steps up, you always favour your left-hand side. It's easier for the left footer to pull the ball across her. And the fact is, the penalty was at a nice height for her. It wasn't a good penalty. Mm-hmm. For Caroline's standard anyway, for sure. So number 1, Courtney guessed well, and number 2, she technically she did well to parry it into safety. But in general, if you look at the penalty, Caroline should be disappointed with herself.
How are you on the current rules? Because occasionally I get things wrong, very rarely, just to encourage everybody else. But one of the things I've been wrong about is I consistently said when it was like the foot on the line and behind the line, it's making a mockery of just when you award a penalty, give the goal, because increasingly they see FIFA or the international board seem to not want to give goalkeepers a chance. But goalkeepers and goalkeepers coaches have adapted, and they're now thinking about an extra thing about, first of all, it was one foot, you could have it off the ground, but still in line with the line or behind it. Now you've got to have the foot actually touching the ground, be behind the line. It's like, all right, okay, you've caught this and that. We're going to introduce something else. Where are those rules? Because she does it right, and we see it week in, week out in international coverage of football that keepers are just having to plan about guessing right and leaving a trailing leg and still leaping fully across a goal. What do you think about that?
I think it's a bit ridiculous, to be honest. I mean, the advantage is with the penalty taker, and yet they're still trying to take away any little glimpse of hope we have. I mean, there are too many rules. I understand why they wanted to stop goalkeepers approaching. I mean, I played with a goalkeeper that used to come out maybe 3 big steps. That was ridiculous. Okay, that's silly. So I understand why they were trying to limit that. But you can't expect a goalkeeper to be thinking about all of these things and then save a penalty, be an excellent penalty stopper. As well as that, which more infuriating than anything for me, is that it's not consistent. You'd see one game, well, he was off his line by 2 feet. And then another one, they're calling the penalty back because he stepped a tiny bit. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're not consistent with it. They have to be consistent with it.
What was your relationship with penalties as an Arsenal player or Ireland player?
I think I was known to be quite good at penalty saving. One of my first FA Cup finals, we were playing against Fulham, who had become professional, the first professional team. We were still semi-professional. And it was my first season, and I was starting, but the other goalkeeper was getting back fit, so we weren't sure he was going to start. Anyway, I started in the final. And Fulham were all over us. They absolutely bombarded us. And they got a penalty towards the end, and I saved it. So ever since then, I think there was...
Do you remember the moment?
Of course, yeah, I remember it clear as
talk
day.
us through it. We've got an audience that actually likes to hear talented people saying, this is what I did, this is what I felt like. So if you do remember the moment.
Well, I remember this is how long ago it was, we had a sweeper. I remember our sweeper, Carol, don't know her second name, terrible with names by the way, gave away the penalty, and I'd already been extremely busy that game, and I was like, that's it, we're done. That was my initial reaction. Carol was crying, so I was like, oh my God. Marianne Spacey came up to me. Marianne Spacey came up to me before the game, and she said that I've heard that Fulham think you're the weakest link in the team, which I didn't know how to take. I was like, why are you telling me this now? Like just before the game. So I was a little bit, but I was like, oh, well, I'm going to show them in that case. Yeah. So, when they got the penalty, my initial thing was like, oh, we're done, like that's it. They had a Norwegian playing for them again, I can't remember her name, who was very clinical, and I was like, that's it, we're 1-0 down, we're not going to come back, we're already, on the back foot. And then I remembered what Marianne said, and I was like, hang on a minute, this is my chance to prove them wrong and to basically give them a signal. And the Norwegian stepped up, and a couple of the girls had come up to me and was like, you're going to save it, you've got it, like no problem. And I was like, yeah, I do actually. I felt really confident in that moment, and normally I don't. Normally I'm like, I'm just going to guess, I'm going to maybe a bit of luck. But I felt, no, I'm going to save this. She was right-footed, and again, like Courtney saved from Caroline's left foot, I wanted her to go to my
your
right.
right, yeah.
Plus, I was stronger on my right. So what I did, which you see a lot of keepers do now, but I didn't, it's something I thought I'd made up at the time. When she'd made her first step towards the ball, I had just dropped my shoulder a little bit left because she was looking at me the whole time. I had just dropped it a little bit left, I'm doing the little action as I speak, and then as she struck it, she went to my right. And actually after the game, she told me that she thought I had gone to my left. So it worked, whatever I'd done. And she said she was going to go to my left and changed her mind because of that. So.
Wow.
So I didn't tell her, I did it on purpose.
That's better still than saving it. Having her tell you her narrative inside her head just as the icing on the cake.
Yeah,
That's
actually
beautiful.
it was, because I just assumed I'd guessed the right way. But actually, I had encouraged her.
It's a great game of spoof. And now you watch the stutter step taken, men's game, women's game. And you watch the stutter step, and for example, Sergio Ramos is very good at it. But I've seen players do that and do a stutter step. There was one recently, I forget who missed. I was commentating on it. And they're looking at the ball. Well, hold on a fucking second. If you're doing that stutter step and dragging the kicking foot, whether it's left or right, you have to be looking at the keeper to see if your stutter step has made them move. That's what the whole thing is about. So the idea about you doing a high noon, the two of you and the Norwegian, like, going, I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, you drop your shoulder and you're like, fuck. Brilliant.
Well, the thing about the stutter step is that you can actually be focused on the ball and still see your peripheral vision.
You should be able to strike a penalty from 11 metres, without looking at the ball, and it should be the relationship between the keeper.
No, absolutely. But even if you're looking at the ball, you can see the keeper. You can see the keeper moving, yeah. Okay. You can see them. But the problem with the stutter step is you're waiting for the keeper to move. And if they don't move, then you have to try and generate the power to place it and change your mind nearly. And that's difficult for the penalty
I know I'm the
taker.
amateur, I'm talking to the expert, but in the scenario you've painted there, if you're about to strike and the keeper hasn't moved, the chances of them getting down to either side has gone down, because you need it you just as a keeper, you need just to be almost like, for example, in Caroline's, in the one that was saved from Caroline, you know, Ireland's keeper is all the way down there, and
I mean, for me, you have to anticipate a little bit, but the Bob Wilson idea also works, because he told me, we were talking about penalties, and he came to me saying he heard I was a good penalty stopper, and he asked me what I do. He was interested, and I said I try to encourage them to go one way, but I anticipated it. Mm-hmm. And he told me that there is a foot inside the post that you are never going to get to, never. Mm-hmm. Only if you anticipate. So you're left with a dilemma. If you don't anticipate and react, which is what a lot of coaches try to tell me to do, you can get to the ball if you react, but you're never going to get to those places if they put it in the right place. So, I mean, it didn't give me any answers because I still didn't know which one I should choose. So most of the time I anticipated, to be quite honest. Unless I didn't respect the penalty taker. If I didn't think they were extremely good, I would try and react because I didn't think they were going to put it in the corner.
It's interesting. We could genuinely dedicate the whole podcast to this. And Bob Wilson, Arsenal double goalkeeper in 70-71, I think. Scotland goalkeeper too. Legend at the club, a fantastic, decent man too.
Oh, he's brilliant.
You had I don't know how you felt about him. So you had Jason Brown, as ex-Dandy, as a goalkeeper coach too.
Yeah, a short. He was there for maybe one season, I think. So
played for the Dandy, so you might as well. I've never met him. But he played for Aberdeen, so that's good enough for me. Before we leave the game, I have to talk about the goal because it was fucking extraordinary. And I need you. Well, I thought it was a beautiful goal. I can't tell. Was it Niamh that when the ball is played forward loosely by Scotland, one of your defending players it's just sensational. I see the ball coming. I'm not going to go for chest control, but it's a controlled header down into Denise's path, and I can't remember who it was. I thought it was Niamh, maybe.
Niamh Fahy.
Was it Niamh?
It was Niamh Fahy.
Good, at least I've been...
I mean, she had an excellent game. And we actually had a conversation because I wouldn't have spoken about our back three come five. They say it's a back three, it's a back five. I wouldn't have spoken about them very nicely or complimentary. And I've had conversations with them because I want them to understand that it's not about them personally, it's just the organisation, as I said before. So I've spoken to Niamh loads about this. And speaking about Scotland, I said, if you don't go in to midfield and get close to Caroline Weir. Caroline loves that space, doesn't she? Mm-hmm. That's our problematic area, that space in between the midfield and the back 3 or 5. I said, if one of you don't go in there to her early when the ball's on the way, you're going to get destroyed. You're going to get absolutely torn apart. And Niamh was like, oh yeah, absolutely, we have to do it. And it's exactly what Niamh did. Every time the ball, someone looked like they were going to play to Kaz, she was in there on her, and she didn't get sniffed, did she? I mean, I consider Kaz one of the best footballers in the world. She looked average that game because of how we defended. So when that ball was getting played into that area, Niamh went in and, as you said, cushioned the ball down to Denise.
That's quite what she did on the move, to be anticipating how you control it at all, defend it at all, but also seeing somebody and then cushioning the header. I still think at any level of the game, I still think that's a laudable moment when you're like, I can do 3 things at once, where I anticipate, read the rest and do the technical thing well. And it's the root of the goal. But I thought it was sensational. Yeah,
I mean, we're talking about really experienced players there. I mean, players that have been playing for the national team for 15 years, nearly at this stage. Mm-hmm. It's a long time. I mean, it is, I consider, one of our best units, our defence. And they're very, very experienced. And, of course, Femení Fahy is the best defender we have.
Okay, and then Denise's ball, because the ball comes to her, any counter-attack, people like to call it transitions now, don't they, and how you use a transition, how you react to it. It took me a long time to understand that word, but the way she runs onto it and the pass she releases, I think is, again, at any level, men or women, it doesn't matter, it's just a beautiful ball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so used to that with Denise, and it's a player that probably doesn't get enough recognition, certainly not on, the top level front. She's a fantastic player, absolutely brilliant.
But am I exaggerating the quality of the pass?
No, but I'm so used to it. I see her doing it all the time. She does it in training, she does it with Ireland, but she had the space to do it.
Yeah, but I think if you lift that pass and apply it to Real Madrid or Barcelona or Liverpool or Chelsea, people are going to be oohing and eyeing.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's what we all pay for, to pay our tickets to go to. It's why we sit and watch it.
Yeah, no,
it was transcendental. And the finish too, because the control is 2 foot, I think left foot first.
First touch was
maybe right foot first, then left foot? No, left foot first, then right foot finish.
Yeah, 3 touches, left foot, right foot. And, Heather Payne, the girl that Amber Barrett, the goal scorer, came on for, Heather Payne is a fantastic player. Right. She does an amazing job for us. She, her work rate is incredible. She really helps the midfield as well by closing down. But if you want that ball to fall to anyone, it's going to be Amber Barrett, because her finishing in a 1v1 situation, she's absolutely quality. Mm-hmm. And when she came on, I was like, I'm not sure she's going to be able to do, keep that work rate up that Heather Payne had. And we need that as a transitional team, counter-attacking team. But obviously, she was absolutely brilliant.
It was a sensational goal.
Great
really
goal.
Still wish we could.
It wasn't easy, was it? Because it was on her left foot, and she managed to nearly toe poke it.
Well, I thought that. I mean, again, I'm only an amateur watching, but I thought that was part of it, because when I see strikers that, through peripheral vision, like you were talking about, go like, I know where the keeper's balance is, or I know if I put it away now. Ansu Fati's got it, and Messi had it because it wasn't always power with him. Jimmy Greaves had it way back. It's like knowing that if I release now. The keeper's balance is exactly,
that's the most difficult thing for the keeper, because it was on Amber's left side. I think the keeper thought she had an extra second to get set, because Amber had to hit it with her left. But actually she took it a little bit earlier than what your keeper thought. So it's impossible to save when you're on the move.
It was pretty classy. Can I take you to, before we go back to Arsenal and the Champions League, we're in the city of Barcelona right now. You've been watching, you've been close to, you've been commentating on the growth of something quite phenomenal, because although Barcelona had years where they were appearing around the top of European football, right now, albeit they lost the last Champions League final, the Ballon d'Or belongs to Barcelona twice in a row. The performance against Chelsea was pretty stunning. And you've seen the way in which there's been both an exponential growth, an ability to attract talent, a developed style of play. Suddenly there's a Clásico in Spain. A lot of people won't remember that Real Madrid's women's football setup is relatively new. What have you watched that you've enjoyed, or that you can identify as being important, the details, the inside view of the way in which Barcelona football for the women's team has grown so rapidly and so successfully?
Well, I think the first thing you'd have to talk about is how the club itself have treated the girls and how they've initiated this professionalism within the club and included the Femení side with it. The women's team belong there. They feel like they belong. They have their own section. They've got their own dressing rooms. It's theirs. And the club have made them feel that. Also, the investment in money has been massive. Not just the players' salaries. I'm talking about the background staff. They've got in excellent people, whether it's conditioning, coaching. They have their own doctor. Little things like this that are really important to get the best out of your girls physically and mentally. And the club have been the catalyst for that in women's football, I think. And then all that goes into, you know, signing the right players, building on what you have, the fact that you've got one of the world's best players in midfield. But Alexia has become the best because of Barca as well, because of all the extra training, the conditioning, the coaching, and of course the players around her. You can't be the best on your own. You've got the rest of your team. There's an excellent team there. And they've just adopted the Barca style, that DNA. You know, if you know Barca, they have their own family of coaches. It's very unique. It's very familiar. I think that's a Spanish word. I've put it into English. And it works. The Barca Femení were playing more like Barca than Barca were 2 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
And
because the ethos hadn't changed, like with the men's team, different coaches maybe brought in different ideas and it became quite Messi dependent. And even now under Xavi, you wouldn't say it's very similar to what Barcelona played under Rijkaard or Pep Guardiola, whereas the Femení side stuck to core Barca principles more.
Yeah, and you know, that's easier when you're winning. When you're winning games, you're not under pressure to try and win games, to try and get the most, the best way to score. Where the Barca men under Koeman did that, didn't they? They just needed the points. Everything else went out the window, type of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I understand that as well. So the Barca Femení, they've been, you know, the absolute titans here in Spain for years. They win everything domestically. In fact, when I'm commentating, I'm hoping that the opposition play well because I want to see them tested. It gets a little bit boring when they're winning 8, 9, 10-0. I mean, what did they win? It was a 10-0 the other night or 9-0 in the Champions League. And that's a shame for me more than anything.
Because you stopped developing player?
I don't think you stop developing because these girls are hungry. They're absolute beasts for, you know, improving and winning absolutely everything. And of course, they didn't win the Champions League last year, so they're here on a mission. But I just think for opposition, I mean, I've never been beaten 10-0, so I don't really know how it feels. But I imagine it's completely demoralising. I've been beaten 5-0 by the USA, and that was enough for me to think, I don't want to play these again. I know we have to work hard, and for, you know, as a team, as a national team, where are we going? It does make you question things. And you just hope that the other clubs, the other teams start developing a little bit, but you want to see a good game of football, don't you? I mean, there was a stage where I didn't even watch the qualifiers for the Champions League, and I started watching in the quarter-final stage.
Because they were walkovers.
They were walkovers, and I want to see good games. So you just hope the rest of it's up to the other teams to catch up. Obviously, Barca are doing a great job, and they'll continue. The rest has to catch up.
What did it do for you personally, as an analyst, as a potential coach, as an ex-player, when that Camp Nou Clásico was? I mean, because both games, to my mind, I thought they were fantastic games. With your vast experience of the women's game, maybe I've missed competitive matches where they're that standard. But for Madrid to have closed the gap so quickly, and we were beaten twice, but I thought that they were exceptional in tactical planning. But to have a full Camp Nou was extraordinary.
Incredible.
Next round again, full again. It had repercussions around the world because it was a record. Again, what does that do? What did it do for you? What does it do for the club? What does it do for the women's game?
I mean, for me, again, I just felt proud, and I felt that, and I also felt proud of the club. Even though I've never played for Barca, working for Barca, I can see what they're doing, and it's it's a little community, a very welcoming place. So I felt proud of them. And I was just happy. I was happy that women's football can finally, it can be something that we can be proud of, we can talk about it, and we can say, no, they can get 90,000+ people at the game. People watch the game. I don't have to argue anymore over a pint of Guinness. I don't have to prove anything and still have that doubt in my mind. That was my problem, still doubt. Would people come and watch though? I don't know. Can I argue my point here? Now I can, and it just feels, again, comforting, and as you said, cleansing, that was a nice word, that women's football can attract these crowds. And not only that, the crowds were there I tried to get home after that game. The crowds were there for 25, 30 minutes afterwards. It was impossible to move. They weren't even just there for a ticket. They were there to support the girls. They wanted their autographs. They wanted to celebrate them as they were walking around the pitch, and it was just amazing. It was an amazing thing to see. And again, I talk about Barca being the catalyst. It's never been done before, never. They opened up Camp Nou, and a lot of clubs don't do that for their female teams. Because why? Because they say they're not going to get bums on seats. It's the perfect example.
It's astonishing, because I'm very fortunate. I was born in the 60s, white male. The world was orientated towards me. So I've only had to learn the phrase about you can't be it until you can see it, which applies to a lot of the new thinking in life, where people are like, well, that was old-fashioned, it was shackling, it was ridiculous, it was complacent. So therefore, the impact on me as a father of 2 daughters, but living in the neighbourhood and working at the game, coming back, the degree to which I saw shining faces. I'm mostly talking about young girls, but young boys too, the utter passion, the excitement, the fact that a lot of men's football at that level, because that was a Champions League quarter-final, I think it was a quarter-final, but it was an elevated stage. A lot of young kids, the parents can't necessarily afford a subscription at home or the ticket price to go, but they got to go. The fact that it was Femení, okay, fine, but the utter enjoyment, it's inspiring. I think young women, young girls to think, I want to do that, I can do that, there's my example. Yeah. But equally young boys are like, that's my club, that's my badge. There were a number of Madrid fans there. The first leg didn't have the same crowd because they didn't use Bernabeu, but to me it was a transformative thing. And maybe you can go back to the World Cups that the USA were winning, the crowds there, but to make sure that the impact is spreading now with the increase in professionalism, the recognition that by television companies and sponsors, we have to be in there. There's a scramble to catch up now all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's it, and that's what it's all about. And that started by the clubs giving the respect to their players, because you talk about kids and the gleaming faces and them wanting to go to games. That's because they have seen those female players, whether it was on TV, whether it was on billboards. If you go down here, Paseo de Gracia, you can see a big billboard of Alexia. And that's because people are giving them that respect, giving them that platform, and that's where the kids learn it from. They learn from everyone else, from the elders. So it has to start with us. That has to start with us, and it has to continue with us for the kids, the younger generation, the next generation, to have that passion.
So I need to know, that given that it's brought you here to obviously this table in the peak of your career.
Peak of my career.
No, that was a serious point. Hold on. Was it the best decision you ever took to go? What were the circumstances of going on the lash in England for the weekend? And Vic Akers going, listen, I know you haven't brought your boots, but I'm as interested in what took you to England? Who said, I tell you what, let's have a brilliant weekend, and what happened then?
Yeah, that's so long ago. My God, Graham. Well, originally I was playing football in Denmark. That was my first professional contract. Yeah. Bearing in mind, I barely travelled outside of Dublin. I might have gone with the Gaelic teams down the country somewhere, but I never travelled really. So I was in Denmark, just finished my leaving certificate, and I didn't want to be there. I'd left all my friends. Yeah. We didn't even have mobiles. Like, that's how old I am.
I'm old enough to remember writing letters, so don't worry about it.
And I'd ring from the landline, I'd ring my friends and, can't talk, we're going now, we're going to this party, we're going here, we're going there. And I'd be sitting in...
buggers.
I was staying in a lady's house. She, you know, it was kind of like digs.
Which was the city that you were in? Or the region?
Kjoring, the north of Denmark.
Kjoring, I don't know.
The very, very north as well, which was, it was miserable weather.
Yeah,
even worse than Ireland. Like,
come on.
Sorry,
Sorry, Kjoring.
So I was there and I was with this little family, and which is nice. It was lovely, like, to be there with them. But again, I just wanted to go home, to be honest. It was a great experience. I was training every day, really good coaches. You know, they didn't even speak English though, so it was really difficult for me. So I left. Then the coach came over to Ireland, brought me back. I went back, and they convinced me to stay, but I think I lasted another 3 or 4 months, and I was like, look, I'm sorry, I can't. I just mentally cannot stay here. So I went home anyway, and I started working for the FAI actually. And my friend Ciara Grant, my very good friend Ciara Grant and Carol Conlon, who were on the national teams with me under 16, 19s and seniors, they were playing in Arsenal at the time. They'd been scouted in a five-a-side tournament, and they'd gone to Arsenal the year before. And Ciara was like, come over for the weekend, what are you doing next weekend? Come over for the weekend, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, all right, okay, we'll go over. And me and a couple of friends went over, and we stayed with Ciara and Carol, who were living together. And they had training the Thursday night, I remember it. I had got a flight on the Thursday. I was there on the Thursday at lunchtime. I'd gone around to their offices, they worked at Arsenal, to say hello. And they were training that night. And I was thinking, what are we doing? Where are we going after your training? What time you finish training at? Well, so we won't be out till 10 o'clock at night. And blah, like, who's coming with us, right? All this kind of stuff.
I've been there. I know that.
First time in London, I was buzzing.
Tell me, we need to get out.
There I get. So we'll be all ready. Don't worry, 10 minutes getting ready. It was none of that like they are now, like 2 hours getting themselves dolled up. No, none of that. Anyway, I was sitting in the office on the swing chair. I remember it was like yesterday. And next of all, Vic Akers walked in. He was like, hello, darling. And I was like, hi, all nervous. And Ciara was like, Emma, this is Vic. This is who I've been telling you about. Just so happened their goalkeeper was injured at the time. And Vic said, and that's all the accent I'm going to do with Vic, by the way, because the rest is shocking. And Vic was like, oh, you're a goalkeeper, eh? I was like, yeah, I can play for the national team, all this kind of stuff, shy. And he was like, do you want to train with us tonight? And I was like, oh, no, I'm thinking, I'm going to the pub like in 10 minutes. Oh, no, it's grand, don't worry. Another time maybe, you have no gear or anything with me. And he was like, oh, lucky I'm the kit man then for the men's team, because I can get all the kit you want. And I was like, I've no gloves around. And he was like, I have gloves, I have everything. So anyway, talked me round into training that evening. And that was it, basically. After training, I'd made about 6 or 7 mates that I'd convinced to come on the piss with us that night. And Vic asked me to call around to the office on the Friday morning and was like, we want you to sign, and we want you to sign today, and we want you to play on Sunday.
Fucking hell.
And that was it.
Life is full of, people say sliding doors moments. That's bursting through the fucking doors. Here I am. Was it a setup? Had Ciara said to him? Because it all seems it feels like you were ambushed. They were like, let's try and get this guy.
But to be fair, I knew their goalkeeper was injured. I knew they were looking for a goalkeeper. I hadn't planned on going and training because I just thought it was beyond my reach, to be quite honest. I didn't bring any gear with me. I had no intentions of training or anything. I wanted to watch them play, and if I thought I was better than the goalkeeper, maybe I would have spoken to Vic.
Vic you worked with Vic for a long time.
Yeah.
A figure venerated forever now. Arsenal. There's so many. I don't even know how to say this properly. It's a bit embarrassing. There's so many women's sports now, which it's proven that the men who are involved, organiser coaching, have turned out to be scum.
You're talking about the scandals in America, right?
It's pretty non-stop.
Yeah.
Vic is forever associated with kit man at Arsenal, which if you're a good kit man in a winning side in any club, you're not a legendary figure, but you're much loved and you're identified as success. But he was central to the women's side of football at Arsenal, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he set it up. He was the one who got a group of women together and to kick a ball about. That was literally him starting it. We were really lucky, actually, the fact that he was involved with the men's, not just because we got loads of kit, and we used to get loads of the men's shirts, like if the men didn't want them. I actually got a full long coat from Arsene Wenger, the one he used to wear on the sideline.
The one that you could
really
never quite get on properly.
The hood.
Fantastic.
And I brought it home. Everybody was absolutely buzzing about that. So like we used to get loads of kit, which was brilliant. No other team did that. We didn't have to pay for boots, which is a huge thing. Like for us, you know, boots are so expensive. For me, gloves, it was a brilliant thing. I mean, that alone would have.
What were your brand?
So we were with Nike at the start, whatever the team were sponsored by. We were with Nike, then I got individually sponsored by Nike, and then I got individually sponsored by Puma. So
what were the characteristics of the best gloves you've had that fitted with your needs, your personality?
I mean, it's funny. The first pair of gloves I ever bought were £90 punts. Irish. This is I feel so old.
€3.
90, which I'd say in this day and age probably would have been about €350. So I mean, I think it was my communion money. And these gloves were just ridiculous. They were so sticky, and it just gave me that little bit of confidence. I always bought my gloves just a tiny bit too big because I didn't like the.
You don't want to be restricted, presumably.
Exactly.
But the stickiness that makes you feel that if I get to it, it might stay?
No, just catching. I caught everything, Graham. There was no parrying.
Don't say it as if I have any doubt about that. But you didn't have a GA background, did you?
I did, yeah.
You did it, you were GA, were you?
Yeah, that's why they made me go in goals, because I played a lot of GA. But anyway, my first gloves were super expensive. They were very good. The problem was it always rained in Ireland, so the stickiness was a bit pointless. It never really worked. But I did realise that I do like the cushion. I don't like flimsy, light gloves. I like the cushion gloves. Don't like those finger saver gloves. That's really restrictive. So in the end, when I was with Puma, they actually designed the glove for me because they started bringing in these, you know, the twisted finger ones, all these kind of different ones. I was like, no, just give me a pair of gloves, nice padded gloves, and that it doesn't get kind of shiny. Once it gets shiny, it gets a bit slippy. Anyway, so yeah, basic, nothing crazy. The first pair of gloves I bought were ridiculously expensive, and then I realised they weren't that great anyway. And just as long as I was able to wet them and feel like they weren't slippy.
Because confidence, I mean, I want to do this now. I have to do this now because there's a great, what's your phrase? Where have I got it here? About the loneliness of being a goalkeeper. I hope after all this I do have it. Like
I'll tell you one story. I don't know if you've ever met a guy called Alex Welch.
I don't think I have.
He was a coach at Arsenal, he coached the boys at Arsenal, and then he went to Tottenham. So he was and he also was a coach educator with the FA. So if you're in the coaching world, you'd know him. And I went training with the boys because we didn't have a goalkeeping coach at Arsenal for years. So I used to go down to Hale End with the lads. And all the lads had these really expensive gloves, you know, probably sponsored or whatever. And I had normal, average gloves, and they all used to laugh, like we'd joke, and they were like, what are these things? These things wouldn't catch cold, all this kind of stuff. And Alex, my coach, took their gloves and he tied them in the back of the net. And he started hitting the ball into the net. And we were all like, what's he doing? And he did it for ages, and we were all like, and in the end he goes, did they save any goals? Did they save any balls? And they were like, no. There's your point. That's my point. No gloves are going to save. It's about the keeper. And then after that, they were all wearing average gloves like me.
Nice one, Alex.
And just worked on their technique.
It's funny the psychology of how, because you said before you're a teacher, how you get messages across, how you calm a group down, how you stop the bullshit is...
This is why I'll speak about Alex Welch again, is the best coach ever. And I've watched coaches. I'm not just talking coaches. I've had the best coach I've ever seen, I've ever worked with. whatever, because he is a psychologist. He also was a teacher. He just understood how to get his point across. He understood how to build you up as a keeper. He understood how to recognise a mistake, how to recognise technical errors, everything. He just had everything in one, and for me was just incredible. Not just for me as a goalkeeper, for me as a teacher, as a coach, as a person.
Because sport, and this will increasingly begin to dominate the women's game, because it's, in terms of finances and profile, it's only beginning to catch up or make the first step in the journey. But you're fully aware that in the men's game, where the wealth is obscene, convincing is a word now that, as much as ordering or asking individual players to do things through common sense or habit, top coaches are talking about the psychology of convincing all the time. Now, that doesn't have to only apply to multimillionaire footballers. If you can convince properly at any level, it's a massive step in coaching.
I think it kind of describes exactly how things have changed. Coaching before was like dictatorship. You do this, you go there,
like the army.
Play. Yeah, and to be honest, I didn't mind it because, that's how we grew up with coaches. And then it changed a little bit. It's about, when they say convincing, it's helping your player understand why you want them to do a certain thing, why they need to do it, why it's better for the team. That's convincing a player. And it's the best way, because you're not only creating better footballers, but you're creating better coaches. Mm-hmm. And if you are a coach on the pitch, then you understand everyone's role, you understand your role. And if something goes wrong, you can problem solve yourself. You actually don't need your manager shouting at you on the sideline.
When you see in any sport, but I'm attached to the men's game of football, problem solving on the pitch, you know when it's happening, you know which players you can count on doing it all the time, and you know it's the antidote to, I often quote it here, so I'm sorry, Tuchel, the first time I met him, he was Dortmund manager, and he talked about, I would never coach youth the way that I used to, because I said, give them the best of everything, treat them like royalty as kids, incentivise them that way. And we've bred robots who don't have solutions to problems. And therefore that idea about problem solving, because you've been well taught and you take responsibility and you've got a brain and you understand you're not just, I'm following A, B, C, oh, it's gone wrong, what do I do now? That's shit.
Exactly. I mean, it's not difficult to see, or it's not unusual that practically all of Alex Welch's goalkeepers have become coaches.
Where's Alex now?
Alex he actually works for London Playing Fields charity in London, and so he focuses on that a lot. But he's just incredible human being.
Well, I'm really glad to have mentioned him, that you've been able to talk about him that way. It's an advancement in my learning.
You should get him on here.
I'll try to look him up, and I'll try to find him. And playing fields, we need playing fields instead of building fucking
he's the advocate for that.
Stop taking green grass away from kids. Goalkeepers are part of the team until they make a mistake, then we're on our own, and it's a lonely place one can only escape from by regaining confidence with games, is the quote of yours that I was looking for. We've had many goalkeepers on here, David Priest, Mark Schwarzer, Craig Gordon, I forget. It's not such a bad life being a goalkeeper, is it? Should we always feel sorry for and protective of goalkeepers, do you reckon?
We're odd. We're an odd
I
unit.
like that.
But we have to be. We have to be a little bit different, to be quite honest. I mean, I played out on pitch. I was made go and goal. We didn't have a goalkeeper. And it took a long time for me to embrace being a goalkeeper, to be quite honest. But when you think about a goalkeeper's job, I mean, a goalkeeper, they don't have the luxury of passing backwards like other players on the pitch.
I've never heard it expressed like that. But
they don't have that luxury.
Right.
So straight away, we're limited. We can only pass forward. And even with that, we're the last line. We don't have the safety net underneath us. I mean, we have to be different. We have to have a different mentality. We have to be very strong-minded. We have to be quite thick-skinned. And to build that need is, there's certain things you have to do, whether it's in training or whatever. You always hear stories about players saying, oh, God, they were mad, he was mad, she was mad. Yes, we are mad, because we have to be a little bit mad. And, you know, we're training, not only do we have to be one of the best with our feet, by the way, we have to be the best with our feet because, again, we don't have that safety net behind us. We have a net. So we have to train with the outfielders, or certainly do the same amount of training with our feet as the outfielders. And then when they're all off playing their fun little keep possession and rondas, we're training like the serious stuff, the goalkeeping stuff. So we do double the amount. And it's not nice throwing yourself around. That's not fun. It might be fun for kids, but when you get to a certain age, 20, 22, and things are starting to hurt and you still have to throw yourself around the pitch in training.
Nobody ever talks about that. You do feel it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
A lot of people come out of a career in football with bad hip, bad knee, bad ankle, or whatever it might be. What you're talking about is the type of bruises and damage you get. Is it short duration pain, or does that eventually stay with you? Well, tell me, I don't know.
No. I mean, it could be different for the goalkeepers, but I ruptured my cruciate when I was 17. So that, for me, has been a problem since I was 17. I did my cartilage, my meniscus, everything. In fact, I was told I had to stop playing when I had the operation. I was told I wouldn't play anymore. And I wasn't having it. I was like, I'm playing, I don't care what's going to happen, whether I have to get a new knee when I'm 20.
What stage is this?
When I had the operation when I was 18.
Wait, you were told then that was a threat to your future career?
Yeah, the words Ray Moran, who's a very famous surgeon in Ireland, Ray Moran, you need to consider playing at the level you're playing at. So, of course, as well as that, I don't know why surgeons, doctors tell you stuff when you're just coming round. Like, you're never in the right mind. And then when people ask you what they said, how are you supposed to remember? Like, you're still high on the drugs. Anyway, so that I didn't listen to that advice.
Sheer stubbornness?
Stubbornness, and I didn't want to have to change my life that dramatically. Football was my out. Football was my safety place. So it wasn't an option for me, you know. Anyway, so I struggled with my knees a lot. But then, of course, I had broken every single toe in my foot from people standing on them. Although that's from Gaelic as well. I'm not going to blame football for that. I've dislocated all of my fingers. My teeth have been smashed in. Now my knees, like the long-term effect is my knees, I'll definitely need a knee replacement. They told me that. They told me that I'd probably need a knee replacement on my left knee as well. You can't walk around for that long. I love shopping, probably no surprise. Thank God for online shopping. Just, you know, little things that, you know, I'm 43 and I shouldn't really be worried and suffering from. I mean, they told me I wouldn't be able to run after my kids when I was 20. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not having kids, so it doesn't bother me. But I have dogs, can't run after them. Yeah. But, you know, those are the sacrifices that all sports people take, whether it's athletics, rugby.
I'm glad you've explained it. Sorry for my original naivety. But your time is limited. You've got a big appointment coming up. It's hour 2:00. I'm going to ask you to finish maybe by talking about choosing. You've done many things exceptionally, and I think in a couple of years I'll be asking back, because I think your ability and profile, whether you stay with analysis on radio and television or whether you choose to coach or whatever it might be, my opinion, having listened to you, is that the future is going to be equally bright, if maybe a little slower around the shops than previously that you'd like to be. Arsenal is probably your biggest identity, certainly in club football. Pick for me, I've heard you tell it before, but winning the Champions League, you seem to make it sound like the Alamo against the team who, can I say it, Umea?
Yeah.
Is that close?
That's right.
That's my best version. Marta's playing in that team. You've described it constantly as the Alamo, but you won league after league, the FA Cup. Where is the moment, setting humility aside for a second, best memory, happiest thing, most incredible, that you're like, yeah, there's the knee pain and the broken toes and the sacrifices and the, which of the games, which season, which thing makes you go like, that, you know, that was astonishing.
Well, I mean, I had those moments nearly every day in training, because training itself I loved training. I loved jumping around. I loved making those saves. And to be honest, I probably made my best saves in training. So from a selfish point of view, in training and in training with Alex or training with a top goalkeeping coach, because I could feel that respect coming from them. Yeah. So that made me feel really, really good. But I'm going to talk about the Champions League, obviously. I know I say it every time, it's probably getting a little bit boring for people to hear about. But I mean, that was a game that just was an absolute dream. Like, we never thought we were going to win it. Not 1 minute, not 1 second. I was going into those games thinking, if I come out having, made some saves, kept the score down, as if I looked like I was a decent keeper, I'll be happy.
Is it easy to explain to people who don't remember that? Why?
Yeah, because Umeå had won the Champions League 3 or 4 times. They were number 1 in Europe. They had the best player in the world in Marta. And it wasn't like an Alexia Putellas that was an extremely good midfielder, that was the engine. No, it was
Deadly
a player that individually could destroy you. So they had 6 Swedish internationals who were number 2 in the world. It was just like nobody thought we were going to do it. It was nearly like just Umeå need to show up. And they thought it. Like it was 2 legs, which was a bit strange as well. We had to play them twice, which makes it even better. And when we were
which makes it statistically less likely that you pull off a shot.
Exactly. Even if we pulled off a shot away, they'd come and we'd anger them and they'd beat us 5-0 or something like that. So when we were in Sweden, it was literally the whole training session and the whole pep talk was about keep it to a minimum. Keep it to a minimum. If we get a chance, maybe we can do some damage, but keep it to a minimum. Emma, you're going to be busy. Emma, back four is going to be busy. We worked on the defence the whole time. So, with the first couple of minutes, I think they had 3 shots on that. I was like, oh God, this is just going to be a disaster. And the crowd, of course, we didn't have many. We had like 2 or 3 supporters there. So, as the game went on and they hadn't scored, we started building the confidence. But like they were literally all over us. We were defending. We had 11 players behind the ball. Julie Fleeton, who you should know very well.
Superb.
Scott.
Good footballing family.
At one stage she was centre back, so that's how much we were defending. And I was extremely busy. I was like, I'd say I had the ball equally as much as anybody else on the team. So when Alex Scott scored that goal, she
says it was pre-planned.
Cross.
It was meant to fill the net.
You know what? I'm going to let her have it.
Uh-huh. That wasn't convincing.
When she scored, it was still. I was actually worried. I was worried that they were going to. Oh my God! Because normally, if someone scores against us, Arsenal in the league, we're like, oh, hang on a minute, second gear,
serious
5, 6, 7, and 1. So I was like, oh no, why didn't you wait till like the 90th minute? So we just sat back again, parked the bus, as we did, not going to deny that. And the game finished. We weren't celebrating, there was nothing to celebrate, we still had to play them at home. And even interviews, the media, it was all about, how are you going to stop them? They're going to be angry, all this kind of stuff. And actually, the first 5 minutes, I gave the ball away at home in Boreham Wood because I was extremely nervous, even though I looked very calm.
Was that abnormal for you?
It depends on who. I like to take chances, so I did take a chance against Marta.
Do you mean with distribution or?
Distribution, yeah, the ball at my feet. I like to take a few chances. I like to take some players on, give my manager heart attacks. And I tried to do it with Marta, which was a big mistake. Anyway, she got the ball, but Anita Santi slid in and helped me out. But then after that, we just defended really, really well. We were backs against the wall, but I just didn't feel like they were going to score. Even the last minute, Ramona Bachmann came on, a 1v1. She took the shot early as well. In fact, she probably did everything right. And I don't know how, maybe I had acrylic nails on or something, but I just got the slightest touch from it and sent it wide, and they got a corner. And it was like, that's it. That's when we knew we were going to win.
And you still had better saves than that in training? You still stick to that?
Oh yeah. Well, that was, I feel like that was a bit of luck. I mean, they hit the post, right? Get this. The ball was coming from my left-hand side, right? They hit the right post. Mm-hmm. I was in the goal. The ball came back, hit me in the face, and went out that way. How did it not go? It's just, I mean, I can't find
That's
any
what you
footage.
get for spending your communion money properly. It's like, okay, I'm remembering that. Yeah, she's worthwhile. That ball goes that way.
We just had the look. I mean, the save with the fingertip save wasn't luck. That was just sheer, nearly aggression. I didn't want them to score. I mean, she should have scored, to be fair to her. But we just knew after that they weren't going to score.
How did they take it?
Horribly.
Really?
They were disgusted because they felt they should have won, and they probably should have, but they didn't. We did.
Was Alex with you at that stage, or?
Yeah.
And therefore there was a sensational experience to share.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I was looking forward to going because it was only Saturdays I was allowed to go down to his training. So I was looking forward to that Saturday going down, and of course he was full of praise.
Byrne, repeat champion of England, champion of Europe, exceptional talent as far as I'm concerned, but very, very, very good at this. Thank you for sharing. It's been really enjoyable. Look, I've got so much. Came into this after a tiring week. I feel buzzing with adrenaline. You know, I feel
let's
like.
Let's go for a pint.
Oh, let's go. Well, listen.
Let's go for a whiskey.
You've done me brilliantly. I feel like I could go training now, but if we're going for pints, that's where my European quality comes out for absolutely sure.
I challenge you.
This has been Emma Byrne on The Big Interview.